Students, this is me, د.هاني الحسني, and that's the course of Grammar 3. Today we will talk about adjective clauses that in chapter 13 of your book. So pay attention to the information that I will be listed here and noticed by other resources to make your knowledge more rigid and better than before. Here we have the second slide, and that slide is defining the adjective clause. So when we say noun clause, we have a definition of noun clause, and we say what's the difference between noun phrase and noun clause, and what's the difference between phrase and clause. And here we are in the section of adjective clause, which is a subordinate clause used to modify a noun or pronoun in the main clause. So the case here, modification of a noun or pronoun, it's a function of adjective clause. It may be introduced by a pronoun. So we have here reflective clause or reflective pronouns that like who, whose, whom, which, or that. And these pronouns are called relative pronouns because they relate to a noun or pronoun in the sentence. Occasionally, no relative pronoun is used, but it is implied or understood. So in the sentences, we can understand that the sentence should include the relative pronouns like who, whose, whom, which, and that. We said in noun clause it can be kind of similarities to use that and like who or WH question, what and where, but here it just deal with the relative pronouns, especially who, whose, whom, or whom, which, that. Sometimes there is when or where, but they said the focus or the main focus here is just relative pronouns. Adjective clause, also called adjectival or relative clause. So the same, it could be defined as adjective clause or adjectival or relative clause. There is no difference between them except maybe the difference of the books or the authors who wrote any book. So if you read adjective clause or relative clause, don't feel it's a kind of a strange idea or a new idea. It's the same idea, but it's still in a different point of view. So don't confuse if you hear adjective clause, if you hear adjectival, and if you hear relative clause. All of them are the same, and that's how we can understand the grammar more closer. So I know that some of you already check out the information about adjective clause, and they found relative clause is involved in the descriptions, but the way for understanding is to collect all the words that belong to the same function. So we said again adjective clause, adjectival and relative clause. Next we have form and function. We say that it will contain subject and verb. Next it will begin with relative pronoun who, whom, whose, that, which, or a relative adverb like when, where, or why. So relative adverb, when, where, why. So we can understand that it's about kind of issue related to adverb function. And last, we know that finally it will function as an adjective answering the question what kind, how many, or which one. So how we can define the adjective clause? By asking ourselves after reading the sentence what kind or how many and which one. So that's how we can connect the idea and can separate between the adjective clause and noun clause without perplexing feeling about the exact answer. An adjective clause will follow one of these patterns, either relative pronoun or adverb plus subject and plus verb, or relative pronoun as subject plus verb. So both of them, it can or you can follow the format or the formatting when you write or read a sentence. We have here examples. Is she the girl whom you met at the party? So is she the girl? Here we have relative pronoun whom, and then we have subject, and then we have verb. So whom you met, we have relative pronoun, subject, and verb. That's how we can recognize the structure of adjective clause. The second one, this is a book that I like, so we can trace it by finding it out like that I like. It's also a relative pronoun plus a subject and verb. But last, this is a book I like, that is implied, so we can omit that or omit because it's kind of modification. So next, again, we have relative pronouns whose, position, where, location, when, time. We have here also some examples that belong to relative pronouns and how you can refresh your knowledge and memory about using of whose for position, where for location, when for the time. We have here 3 examples. You can follow up and remember or notice how you can understand the relative pronoun. Before we move on, we have who for subject and whom for objects. And the example here, like here, the last one, the guy about whom we are talking won the lottery. So the guy about whom we are talking. So here, whom, it belongs to objects. So it belongs to the guy. So the sentence, we are talking about the guy. So we are talking about the guy. The guy is the object. And here we put whom we are. So the structure of adjective here, it's a relative pronoun plus subject plus verb. We are talking, and that's how we can recognize directly the adjective clause. Whom and who, the examples here introduce a clause about people, and it's very clear. We can understand that the whom and who and that, it belongs to people and belongs to souls, but when we trace the others, like here we have that and which, it's introducing a clauses or clauses to refer about things. The book which I gave you is great. The book that I gave you is great. Both of them, it referred to the book, and the book is not a people, or it's not a soul, but it's a thing. Next, we have these questions you can answer when you have time. We say like the painting which Mr. Flores has in house are very expensive. That's an example for answering. And here when we say the man to whom I sold the Rembrandt was Mr. Flores himself. And here we have a kind of different way for understanding. We have the formal and informal English. When we talk about formal English, we have to put the preposition before the relative pronoun. Why? Because that's how formal English is written. So make sure that if there is a preposition, don't put it at the end or after the relative pronoun. Like here in second example, religion is a subject about which many people refuse to talk. So that's informal, is a subject about which many. But in informal, we put about at the end. Many people refuse to talk about. So make sure that you have or you need to read again these examples and recognize how each, like here we have like for a preposition, we have with, we have about, all of them are preposition, and it preceded the, or they are preceded the relative pronoun, which, that, whom, and it's clear for these examples how it shows you the examples in informal writing and formal. Using adjective clauses to modify pronouns. So sometimes we can omit, or we can remove the clauses or those like relative pronouns from the sentence, because it could be redundant or a repetition for the same meaning, so no need for it, especially with the indefinite pronouns like someone, everything, everybody, anybody, all of them, like these words, it belongs to someone, and someone couldn't be exact or definite pronouns. If you say he, so you are defining or using a definite pronoun, but for indefinite pronoun here, we just can skip the adding of the relative clauses after the indefinite pronouns like someone, everything, anybody. So I can here say, there is someone I want you to meet, or everything he said was pure nonsense. Another example, anybody wants to come is welcome, or anybody, you can keep who in the same condition, but if you omit it or remove who, there is no problem. And another point here, we can modify the one. So Paula was the only one I knew at the party. So the only one, you can keep it instead of saying whom I know. Paula was the only one I knew. So you can use it instead of using the relative clauses. Scholarships are available for those who need financial assistance. And again, an adjective clause with which can also be used to modify the demonstrative pronoun. Demonstrative, like that. Demonstrative, using that. So we sometimes fear that which we do not understand. So you can omit one, like no need to put that and put which in the same sentence. So we can say sometimes fear that we don't understand, or which we don't sometimes, or we sometimes fear which we or that we don't understand. And sometimes we can keep it, we sometimes fear that which we don't understand. And here the last sentence is not important to recognize, but it's important to understand that that is not or no need for it. We sometimes fear which we do not understand, no need to put that there. Next, we have adjective clauses are almost never used to modify personal pronouns. So native speakers wouldn't write the sentence below incorrect, like I who am a student at this school. So no one can mention that kind of sentence. Why? Because no need to put a relative clauses between the subject and the auxiliary verb. It's not used, or it will be totally incorrect. Sentence below, very formal and uncommon. It is I who am responsible. So this is an accurate sentence, but it's not used. It maybe if you want to use it, it can be like a novel or a kind of very formal letter. Sentence below is well known saying in which he used as indefinite pronoun, meaning anyone, any person. He who laughs best. So he here, it means anyone or anybody. It looks like indefinite. Even we can read this kind of style in poetry or poems, because they sometimes use he to refer to anyone or any person. So in our book, we are not here to put or to bring out this kind of sentence in the exams, but we are trying to show you or to tell you that there is an accurate structure for using who in or between the auxiliary verb and the what we call the verb, or the subject and the verb. Like here, he who loves last loves best. because here it's a meaning for anyone. Next, punctuation. We have like kind of punctuation here. Again, we need to understand that punctuation here, general guidelines for the punctuation of adjective. Do not use commas if the adjective clause is necessary to identify the noun it modifies. So you know, like a lot of students will commit mistakes when they use relative clauses. Why? Because we have kind of idea that before who or which, we can put before the structure of who and after comma, because it's kind of additional information can be given. But we use comma if the adjective clause simply give additional information. But if it's not about additional information, we cannot. Here, the professor who teaches chemistry 101 is an excellent lecturer. No commas are used because it's necessary to be there. If I say the professor is an excellent lecturer, I miss one important information about chemistry 101, and that's why we have to keep it, because I cannot separate it. If I say the chemistry professor is an excellent lecturer, I can say it's okay to put here comma and comma, because there is no need for extra or additional information. And down, Professor Wilson, who teaches chemistry 101, is an excellent lecturer. Commas are used. The adjective is not necessary to identify. It means I define already who is Wilson, but here the professor is still ambiguous, or there is no exact or definite name, and that's why I have to keep it without commas. But for the second one, Professor Wilson, who teaches chemistry, I said Wilson, and for sure the listeners or the hearer will understand that Wilson may be his colleagues or their colleagues, or it's well-known name among a lot of students. So you can just put the commas between teaches chemistry, because it's an additional information. Commas are used. The adjective clause is not necessary to identify Professor Wilson. We already know who he is. He has a name. The adjective clause simply give additional information. Commas are used. The adjective clause here is not necessary to identify Professor. So that's how we can give the explanation. Next, we have Hawaii, which consists of 8 principal islands, is a favorite vacation spot. Why we put here commas? Because we know Hawaii. No one in the earth didn't hear about Hawaii. That's why that's additional information about the island. Mrs. Smith, who is retired teacher, doesn't volunteer work at the hospital. So also we put comma because it's a modification. A proper noun begins with a capital letter. So that's how we can deal with it. The man who and that I met. If no commas are used, objects pronoun may be omitted. So the man I met teaches chemistry. No need to put whom or that here, because you can how to say, like, I mean, we need to put somehow, like we can use who or whom and that. It's up to you. You have that choice to use them, but usually the man I met teaches chemistry. That's how we put the sentence and write it very quickly. Mr. Lee. So Mr. Lee, whom I meet yesterday, teaches chemistry. Here, the point that an object pronoun cannot be omitted. Why? So if we back to this sentence, the man whom or that teaches chemistry, or the man whom teaching chemistry, they say like here proper noun. So you have to use comma, but or no need to use comma. Here we have to use comma because whom I met yesterday teaches chemistry. It's very important information. If I say Mr. Lee teaches chemistry, I think the additional here or the commas will not or there is no need to put commas if there is no whom I met yesterday, but because yesterday and meeting is something important to the audience, we can hear or we can sense Mr. Lee teaches chemistry. Maybe we knew or we can trace, but if I add additional information, it will make it clearer because you are describing for others. And here we have using what we call the adjective clauses may contain expressions of quantity with some of, half of, several of, many of, both of, and a few of, most of. How? Let's see the examples. How the expression of the quantity can be included. In my class there are 20 students. So 20 students, most of them are from Far East, and that's why there is a quantity for adjective clause. We can understand the quantity clearly here. In my class there are 20 students, most of whom are from Far East. So you can understand how we can change the sentence. In the exam I can give you the two sentences. In my class there are 20 students, most of them are from the Far East. Please use relative clause. So you have to write it down like this. In my class there are 20 students, comma, most of whom. I cannot write them. Why? Because I put them to refer to 20, but here I no need to repeat again most of them, most of whom are from Far East, because it referred to the object here. The object, it can be a reference, and also there is a quantity. Whereas when we find the quantity, like we say most of and numbering here for the quantity, that's a reference of adjective clause. There are four young people, two of them want to see you now. There are four young people, two of whom want to see you now. The same example, but it's for more understanding. We have here which, used for thing. We understand that which for thing. Only a few of them were valid, and he gave several reasons, only a few of which were valid. So that's how to learn how to do paraphrasing. When you are writing and you are trying to do paraphrasing, when you do this, it's totally the same meaning, and we can ask you in the exam kind of a question like this. I give you a few sentences or two sentences and ask you which one is accurate if you put into once. So we have one sentence. He gave several reasons, only a few of which were valid. So you know, like reasons is not a people, so it's a thing, and that's why we put which. All, and we have watched the celebrations of a New Year Eve. All of the celebrations, so we know that all of and a few of is a kind of a reference for quantity adjective clause. Have amaze us. So we have watched celebrations of a new Eve, then comma, for sure, all of which have amazed us. Whose? The teacher discussed him. One of his problems was poor study habits. The teachers discussed Jim. One of whose problems. Why we put whose? Because the teacher discussed Jim, one of his problems. So problem is kind of position that belong to Jim. So we know, like, we cannot put one of which problems. So why? Because we are mentioning here one name or one person, and this person has his own problems. So one of whose problems was poor study habits. And we have, like, when you invite all like Fitri is going to invite Lotfi. All of Lotfi's article have been published in BBC. So Fitri is going to invite all of whose articles have been published in BBC News. So you know, like here, expression of quantity are more common in writing than speaking. Commas are used. So commas are used. You have to understand how we put the comma without following the other comma back near to relative clauses. That's very important to understand. It's only one comma for using that kind of structure when we mix or put two sentences into once. So here we have using noun plus which. It's kind of the last for talking here. When we have an antique table, the top of it has jade inlay. We have an antique table, the top of which has jade inlay. So I try to remind you with examples, and you know, like the examples here, I can see it has a lot of issues for your understanding. Like here, Tom was late, that surprised me. Tom was late, which that surprised me. The elevator is out of order, this is too bad. The elevator is out of order, which is too bad. So how to modify. So modification of the sentence is something very hard for students, but I say I'm not here to ask you to do modification from the beginning. We will ask you maybe in the coming weeks to do this kind of modification. So the reduction, we will talk about reduction in the coming videos. So let's back and continue from the book. So in the book here we have adjective clauses. We have just around 10 minutes left to talk about the first. We have here adjective clause, pronouns used as the subject. So again, we try to repeat the information in general. We need to understand, I thank the woman who helped me. So who helped me, it means it referred to woman, and the woman, she did something. So the action of the woman, you're describing the woman as she helped you. And I thank the woman, it's a mini clause. Who helped me, it's adjective clause. The book that is on the table is mine, and the book which is on the table is mine. What's the difference between that and which? We can understand that which is or that is preferred to which in American, but in British they prefer to use that and which without any kind of change. So we can understand that is preferable for American English. That's how you can understand if they prefer that in many contexts instead of using which. So that's how we understand the first lesson. Who used for people, that for both people and things, and which for things. Correct. The book that is on the table is mine, and the book is mine that is on the table. This is here very incorrect because the chronological order or sequence order for the sentence looks like fragment and closely follows the noun it modifies. So usually the book that is on the table, so it modifies the noun. Here that is the noun or subject, and it follows directly the subject to describe the book. So when you are finding extra information about the subject or a pronoun or noun, you have to understand it's the same function like an adjective. In the next one we have we have number 2, adjective clause, pronouns used as the object of a verb. So what is the meaning here? Object of a verb. The man whom or who I saw was Mr. Jones. The man that I saw and the man I saw was Mr. Jones. So here we have 3 structures, and these structures it refers to the object, the man I saw. Like here the sentence, I saw Mr. Jones. I saw Mr. Jones. So you are describing John, but you starting the sentence with the man I saw. So it refers to the object following the verb. That's that's the definition of it. Summary, we say whom used for people, that for two things, and again, which is common in the British, not in American. So incorrect, the man whom I saw him. So you don't repeat him, or don't repeat the pronoun again in the sentences that including the relative clauses. Why? Because it looked like very fragment and it is unnecessary to be used. No need to repeat again the pronoun or reflective pronoun that you are trying to put again for emphasizing. So don't use it because it will affect your way of understanding. And the last for the lesson here, we have adjective clause pronoun use the object of a preposition. We said the preposition in the slides should preceded the relative clauses, like here before whom we put about, and again examples you need to understand. She is the woman whom I told you about, and she is the woman that I told you about. All of these we said in formal English we have to put about and the preposition before, so comes at the beginning of adjective clause. Usually in every usage the preposition comes after, but in adjective clause we understand it should be before. So that's what we call adjective clause, but here it's not. Why? Because it's just a sentence that trying to describe something. We have to be sure that preposition is before the reflective or relative clauses, or adjective clauses. So again, if the preposition comes at the beginning, only whom or which may be used. Preposition is never immediately followed by that or who. So if you look at this sentence, the music which we listened last night was good. The music to which we listen, the music to. So that's very accurate sentence. To which, and here the music that we listen to, it's normal, no problem with it, but we have to understand lastly, she is the woman about who I told you. It's incorrect, and the music to that we listened last night was good. It's also incorrect. Why here incorrect? Though she is the woman about who I told you. About who I told you. The problem here, what we found is we starting with the pronoun, so we couldn't put again the or put preposition before who. She is the woman who I told you about. So you left about for the end. Not to, no need also to add even about and who. She is the woman I told you. That's very easy and very common. The music we listened last night, or we listened to last night, it was good, or the music to which we listen, like here. That's accurate. Why we didn't put that? Because the note here, only whom which may be used for the preposition or usual preposition. That how to understand a preposition is never immediately followed by that or who. So you cannot use preposition after preposition. You put that or who. So be careful about these kind of notes. I wish to see you again next week for another video, and maybe we will have another video for this chapter again for more clarification. Thank you very much, and I wish you a nice weekend.